Thank you. Hi,
Hey.
everybody. Nice to see you back. I'm glad you've come back. That's really good. And yeah, head teachers, if head teachers want to stay, of course they're welcome to stay. It's not like we're doing a secret session or anything. Right. So we're going to have a look at all sorts of aspects of practice now, and why they are important. And the first thing I'm going to very briefly talk about is play, because I've seen a real shift in the last few years of schools taking play away and feeling that um, it has no value for the youngest children. And what's going to help children learn is filling their heads with as much information as possible. And clearly, we know that that's wrong. Um, so there are so many different ways of delivering early years, but play should be the one constant that you see everywhere you go. And that should be a conversation that you are having continually around your rationale and the implementation of your curriculum. We've got a really lovely piece of research called The Ambiguity of Play that talks about the development of children's neural pathways, the plasticity of the brain, and what happens if we stop children from playing before the age of 8. And what we do is actively reduce the potential of that brain for future learning. You can see this in action when we've got children who have English as an additional language. The youngest children are far more able to absorb a second language when there is complete exposure to that second language, and it's used in a contextual way, so it's really meaningful. So that contextualizing of the learning is what we're doing when we're using play. And we'll have a very clear strategy that whatever we teach, children will be able to practice and apply as part of contextualized learning, contextualized play in the learning environment. So this really supports creative and critical thinking, which, as you know, is one of our characteristics of effective learning. We know that when it comes to problem solving, so when children move through into their education, we know that where we've had that real focus on play and creative and critical thinking, we know that children are more able to reason and problem solve, and not just in maths, but across everything. But there is a caveat with this idea of play. We need play to be very, very purposeful. It needs to be well planned. So, whatever your objective is, we should see that across the provision. And children should be able to access that objective in a range of different ways. So we kind of move away from the idea of superficial learning. You know, I'm going to teach you how to count to 5, and then you're going to go onto the maths table and count to 5. What we actually need to be doing is ensuring that multiple areas across the classroom has an opportunity, or have an opportunity for children to use knowledge of counting up to 5 as part of that play experience. And that's where we see learning embedded far more quickly when we've got those contextualized play-based opportunities. And I think I'm going to fewer schools at the moment where they are getting rid of play. So that makes me feel happy, because I like playing. Most early years people like to have a little play, don't they? And do you know, a lot of head teachers as well, if they're having a rough day, where do they go? Go and have a sit in the home corner, don't they? And make a cup of tea. It's just nice to get in there, isn't it? Just see what it is you're achieving. So I'm gonna ask if something. Oh, I know, Sheena. This is something Teachers have argued for years in favour of play, purposeful, continuous provision into Key Stage 1. I tell you what, if it was up to me, we would have play right up to Year 6 and beyond, because these are children we're dealing with, and children need to play. We wonder why our children don't have an imagination and don't have any independence or stamina or resilience. And it's because we remove the need for those things when they move into more formal learning. Anyway, that's another conversation, isn't it? So I'm going to ask now that you go into breakout rooms. And the question is, why lead? Why are you a leader? Okay, there's going to be a whole variety of different answers to this. And then we're going to look at what it means to be a leader. So when you go into your breakout room, if you could assign somebody in your breakout room to feed something back, that would be really, really useful. And we'll go through each of the rooms. I think there are 4 rooms, aren't there, Fee? And there they are. So have a look at where you sit.
I've allocated almost everybody, so I can hit the button and they should go automatically when you're ready.
Wonderful. And you're going to have about 10 minutes. You'll go off on different tangents, and that's absolutely fine, but allocate somebody to give a little bit of feedback about why lead. Why are you a leader? Okay.
Okay, I will open the rooms.
Thank you, Fee.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I hope that was an interesting conversation. It always intrigues me how people end up as early as leaders. We'll have some really interesting feedback, I think. So group 1, do you want to give me a little bit of feedback? What were people saying?
Do you want me to speak? Okay. So we talked about the person has to be very passionate. And we obviously want to make a difference.
Yeah.
We said it was kind of a natural progression as well. So once you've been in early years for so long, you've naturally got the expertise and the experience. I know Michelle mentioned about coaching your team as well, and doing lots of research and not being afraid to take risks and try new things.
Yeah, I like that.
I haven't written anything else down. Is there anything else, ladies, that we said?
I was actually trying to find my audio button, and
No, you weren't, Abigail.
Me. We were just talking about how, it's not just about being the complete expert, that you do really rely on your staff. It's about that empowering the staff and making sure that, I think we think that a good leader isn't just a person that's being the dictator, and that it's very much that you have the confidence to work together, to have that collective culture, that collective culture, so that when the leader isn't present, that you are really confident that everything that should be going on is going on in that environment.
That is a really good point. Good leaders leave things in such a way that things tick along, and it's you're confident that you can just let people get on with it. We should be, shouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant, thank you. So room 2.
Hello.
Hello.
So there was a few different things that we talked about. We said about obviously inspiring adults, and the people that we work with in terms of staff, but then your parent communication as well, but inspiring the children foremost than anything. We talked about it being challenging, but for the positive. So for example, I've been at another trust school for 10 years, and then I've just started this school in January this year, and it is a huge challenge as an early years leader, but it brings on new challenges. So I think it's just good for your own personal development and growth. We said about giving the children the best that they deserve, and especially in the early years, and providing all those opportunities for them. But we just said, as a trust, so in our St. Bart's Trust, when we do our early years network meetings every half term, you've got that network and communication and sharing ideas. And we said, as an early years leader for us, as cheesy as it sounds, is it's like a family, and everybody just gets on, and it's really nice to see everybody and communicate. But also, like Anna said at Mia Heath, it's giving yourself the trust, so that SLT are giving that trust in you to make the decisions, and you're there. You've been employed to, because you know what you're doing, and you're there to provide the best opportunities. But we said that trust was a big thing.
Yeah, that is so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
So important. You find, don't you? I think those of you that have been an early years leader for a long time, there are fights that you have to have occasionally, aren't there? To get what is right for the children. It shouldn't be like that, should it? There should be that trust, because, like you say, you're employed in that position. You are, they trusted you to give the job. They should trust your decision making, shouldn't they? Thank you. That's really good. So, group 3.
Hi. We pretty much said what everyone else has said as well. We just spoke about risk taking. We said about the fact that it's nice to have like shared values and visions within the team that you work. You're all in it for the same reason. Got to be extremely passionate. We said we just love the freedom and the flexibility that early years provides. It's nice to, go off tangent if you need to, and immerse yourself in what the children really want to learn about. And it's not that sort of narrows as they move through school. So we just said we really love that. Relationships that you have, we are so lucky to be able to nurture, such precious little beings that, parents are trusting us with. That's such a privilege to have, but you've got to have those relationships, and you have to get that trust, which is really important as a leader, to be like approachable. I think that's really important. Need to be a class clown, really. You need to be getting down and dirty, whatever you want to, you've got to be outside, you've got to be everywhere, and we just said, embrace it. You can't be too controlling. I think you have to be quite easygoing, and I think it's an eye-opener when maybe other key stage 2 teachers maybe pop in, and after about 30 seconds they've either trodden on a child, tripped over, or left, and it's like too chaotic for me. Whereas we look around as early years and just say, what, it's noisy, is it really? That's fine, it's a great day, we're having a lovely day. So I think we just spoke about how amazing it is, really. And how wonderful it is.
I love that, the idea that it's a privilege to set these children off on that whole educational journey. You're absolutely right, and for me it is all about relationships. You get the relationship right, you get that level of trust, engagement, attachment. You can do so much with that child, can't you, in the family?
And I think the relationships with the families as well, I think, and the staff, empowering others to then want to develop their journey and become leaders and carry on is just, it's wonderful. It's just beautiful to be a part of.
Can I just add there, Anna, as well? I think as early years leaders as well, we're advocates of our school, so it all starts with us, and we're setting that precedent for future learning. So that's another reason why those relationships are really, really crucial at the starting point there. Sorry, Anna.
No, absolutely fine. So true.
It is, though. Early years is a bit of a PR exercise, isn't it? It's getting everybody on board with the vision and the values, and so everybody understands what it is that you are trying to achieve for their child. That's lovely. So group 4.
I'll speak. We didn't really decide who was going to. I don't think anybody wants to. We agreed with a lot of what's already been said about that unique opportunity that we've really got to shape these children's journey. The fact that we act as cheerleaders, not for them whilst they're just with us in reception and nursery, but throughout their school journey, and for the parents. And often those relationships that are built become so very strong. It's a shame as that child moves through school, for the parents' relationship with the other teachers. It doesn't always continue in the same way. But we're very fortunate that we are in a position that I've got the time. We said time. We're so lucky we've got time to go with the children's learning, to take the opportunity to just be fully engaged and fully present with the children, and that's not always
that's right, yeah,
happening the rest of the school. We said you've got to inspire those around you, you've got to really have a passion for what you're doing to be a leader. So that's lots of what we said has already been said, so
this is brilliant. Really, really good. It's lovely. It sort of it restores your faith, I think, doesn't it, a little bit. You know, we know that everybody here is all on the same page. Everybody wants the same thing for the children. And then finally, we've got Pennine.
Okay, so I'm going to talk for Pennine.
Thank you.
So we said that you can have a big impact as a teacher, but you can have a big impact as a leader. And it's all about developing others and then watching them become more confident, and also like inspiring the children to become leaders as well and take leadership of their learning and other roles in school. Like a lot of people have said, it's about having passion. As an early years leader, you're the defender of play and the champion of early years. We really want to get the best for our children and our families. We want to look after our team and develop them. And we're all here for the same reason, to lay those firm foundations for the early years and the learning, and to really make a difference in those children's lives that can be life-changing, and to develop relationships with families and build trust. And bring the play approach across school. And we also talked about people who are aspiring leaders as well. They might not be a leader, but they are aspiring leaders and they share those kind of values as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's lovely. I absolutely love that, defender of play. I think that should be, that needs to be a new Marvel hero, that, doesn't it? The defender of play. I think we should get in touch with Disney.
I was going to say it should be a new badge as well, Sarah. I am a defender of play.
That's the new button badge. I love that. Everything you said is just perfect. And it is a challenging role, isn't it? One of the biggest challenges, I think, for early years leaders is that you are constantly role modeling. You have to be on your game 100% of the time, don't you? Unless you're lucky enough to not be teaching. But I think most early years leaders have a teaching responsibility, don't they? And, you know, you're responsible for the CPD, you're responsible for the development of your team, you're responsible for pulling together that vision and the rationale. So you've just got to live it 100% of the time. You can't turn up at school and think, I'm just going to have a chill day today because I'm not feeling it. You know, you've got to be on it all the time. And I think somebody said, you know, you're a good role model. So yes, you need to go and play outside because you need to role model what really high quality outdoor play looks like. But you also need to do things like, you know, wipe the skirting boards down and tidy up. You know, you can't just leave it to everybody else, can you? Because we don't expect other people to do things we wouldn't do ourselves. There's a nice little bit of research from Blanchard and Johnson around leadership and these traits that we see in really good leaders. So have a little skim down there. Can you read it okay on whatever device you're using? Yeah, I don't want to read it out to you.
Sorry, as well, we were saying that you need to have a good sense of humour in early years and not to be in any way squeamish because you just can't be.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely right.
And to be adaptable, because we were saying that you can plan something to the nth degree and the children will take it in a way that in a direction that you've never even thought of. So
yeah. And each cohort's totally different, isn't it? You know, so just because last year they loved trains, it doesn't mean they're going to love trains this year, does it? So you've got to be completely adaptable, but it's knowing the trajectory of learning and development. So it's knowing the objective, basically, isn't it? And that in early years, you have that freedom to take that objective and feed it into any kind of theme or book or whatever. The flexibility. So do any of those sort of jump out at you and make you think, oh, blimey, okay. I think you've kind of covered most things there, haven't you? There are things like risk taking. There are two there that I always raise with new head teachers, and it's the last two. So crises are normal. I'll go into some schools regularly and they'll say, oh, it's been a nightmare week. There's just constant crises. And I'm like, well, it's not a crisis then, is it? That's your baseline. That's what every day looks like. So we can't call that a crisis because, you're telling me it happens frequently. So that's just your normality. Tensions are promising and complexity is fun. And I think that sometimes is quite hard for new leaders in particular to get their head round. They want things to just tick along beautifully. I'll get to the end of my to-do list at the end of every day. And it doesn't work like that, does it? And then that last one as well is about the relationships that you have with your team, isn't it? You get those relationships right, we see less of the paranoia and self-pity. Where we've got new leaders who go in and don't work on developing the relationship, that's when we get fractures in the team. And I might have conversations with leaders and they're saying, well, the team are just talking about me all the time, and I just hide in my office. And I'm like, well, yeah, they will talk about it because you haven't taken the time to build the team and build that trust so that you can take them along on the journey with you. So that's quite a nice piece of research as well, if you're interested in looking at great leadership. So there's lots of challenges in early years leadership. You are sometimes working with the team that you're leading, you are teaching, you are overall responsible for the development of your staff, you are overall responsible for the outcomes for the children, and it's quite a big burden, isn't it, to take on your shoulders, particularly when you've got brand new members of staff who maybe don't know what early years practice is all about, or reluctant members of staff who don't want to change practice, or perhaps members of staff who will say, well, we've always done it like this for the last 48 years, so why do we need to change now? And I think sometimes that final group are the ones that are hardest actually to move on in their practice. But your role is to create the conditions where every single member of your team can thrive. They show commitment and they're not frightened of a challenge, and that is the main thing I think that we're looking for. And why is it so important that we develop the people? Well, if you have a look at this here, this is from Leadership Matters. I absolutely love this model. It's great because it includes everything. Most of the time we have an eye on the future, so we've got a feeling we know where we want to be. So when you self-evaluate and you set your actions, you'll have that vision of where you want to be in the future. And then what we do is put together a series of tasks. So we think about where we are, and we put together a series of tasks that will enable us to get to that future. Well, sometimes we're not building the people into that model. So we're not looking at what the people need to bring them along on that journey. So I think that's an area that you can think of when you're looking at the actions that you might take as part of your action plan. Think about what that's going to mean for the staff. And I've already mentioned, sometimes we have CPD that's universal, so it's for your whole team, but we also have CPD that might be very targeted, because there might be areas that either a member of your team has stated that they want to develop for themselves, or it's a gap in their knowledge and they need further support and training. So your action plan, while we call it an action plan, it's not just about the actions. It's that real targeted approach, how we're going to bring everybody with us on that journey to ensure that we achieve the future. And it is all about knowing why we do things. So golden circle there, I'm sure you've seen this before. Most people know what they're doing. Some people know how they're going to do it. Not many people can talk about the why. And this really is about your vision and values. So what is it that you believe in early years and in alignment with your school, and why is that right for the children that you have in front of you? One of the things that I really push for at the moment, and I'll just skip on to the next slide, is putting together a rationale around the 7 key features of effective practice. So this is from Development Matters. Everyone's seen it. I think it's on page 5 or something of Development Matters. And actually, it's one of the things that the DFE have produced that I actually quite like. And it looks at it in sequence. So we start with the best for every child. And if you look at that, we're looking at the lowest 20%, the disadvantaged children, the children from traumatic backgrounds, the children with special educational need. So it's focusing you immediately on those children that need more support, more focus, more scaffold to enable them to get as close to a good level of development as possible. Your high quality care is about recognising that every single child is different. It's also about meeting the statutory regulations in early years and knowing what the statutory regulations are. But really, it's about knowing the child, knowing child development and knowing your curriculum. So that takes us into the curriculum. That's your top level plan of everything that you're going to deliver. Where it talks about ambition, that means that your ambition is that the majority of your children will reach the early learning goal. So ambition doesn't mean beyond or broader. It means making sure they get to the goal. And if you look at that final bullet point, depth in learning is more important than covering lots of things in a superficial way. So if you think about your curriculum as a progression model, to enable the children to get to that end point, the sequencing has to be right. So children are revisiting and building, revisiting and building, revisiting and building on the essential learning rather than covering hundreds of things and just skimming the surface. And then pedagogy, how do we do that? And you can see it mentions play quite a few times in that column, which is really good. And it's about getting the environment right and making sure practitioners have the right level of knowledge to influence children's learning. Then checking, constant checking. This is an area actually that you might want to really think about, that the assessment aspect, because we've moved away from lots and lots of observations and lots of evidence gathering, which is great because it means that you are in front of the children rather than taking photographs and videos, etc. But how do we know what's going to feed into the planning, or how do we know where to target intervention? And this needs to be those daily assessment for learning conversations, the things that you are constantly doing with your team to ensure that you have the knowledge to feed into your curriculum. Some people are doing it by, getting their staff to just jot notes down in a book each day. I've noticed this. I've noticed that some such body's struggling with this, so they can feed that into the planning. Some people are taking photographs and just putting them into a folder on computers. Some people have a whiteboard where they jot things down. It's entirely up to you, but that conversation, I think, has to be far more frequent than it ever has been in the past, because we need to be gathering information from everybody working in early years. You know what it's like when you're in early years. Everybody has a slightly different relationship with the children, don't they? So you get a different picture of the child, so everyone can feed that information into the assessment to ensure the curriculum continues to be right. And then we've got self-regulation and executive functioning, which is something I've already raised. Explicit teaching of executive functioning and the language that goes around that, and the boundaries and expectations will have a really big impact on children's ability to self-regulate, and will support things like transition. And then, of course, we've got partnership with parents, which most of you have talked about as part of that leadership discussion. So you absolutely recognise the importance of that relationship. So there are your 7 key features of effective practice. And what I've done with staff teams this year is we've looked at each of those areas as a team and unpicked what we do. So what is it that happens at this school, and how is that relevant to these children in this context? And from that, they've been able to pull together a rationale, or a policy, or a vision, whatever you want to call it. So they can absolutely back up every decision that they're making in early years, and they've also brought the whole staff team along with them. So that could be something that forms part of your CPD or your self-evaluation this year. So let's have a look at the self-evaluation headings again. So we've got intent, implementation and impact, working with your families and communities, effective use of adults, transition, and leadership and management. So how are we going to unpick each of those things to ensure that the evaluation that you feed into your self-evaluation form and ultimately your action plan is correct? Well, we're going to have a look at using these 6 headings. So your evaluation needs to be completely purposeful. It's going to lead to some kind of action. There's going to be something that you do as a consequence of that evaluation. It's going to be meaningful and is linked to impact on the children. And one thing I always say is, if you can't write the ultimate outcome using the word children first in that sentence, then it's not worth doing, because it is all about the impact on the children. So what will children gain from this? Context informed, so it's going to be based on the strengths, the gaps and the barriers, and that might be from the children, but it also could be from the adults. What are the strengths? What are the gaps? What are the barriers preventing you from moving on? It's evidence informed, so it comes from your monitoring, from your observations. It comes from your assessment, information analysis. It comes from your playing with the children, gathering information, constantly gathering information. It might also come from training that you might have attended, visits to other schools. But it is meaningful evidence, and you know it's the right thing to do for your children. It's going to have a big impact. It's collaborative, which is why it's so important that leaders take part in the self-evaluation process, and actually gathering information as well from children, parents, governors, and other leaders can really give you quite an accurate picture of what's happening in your early years. And it's connected. Now, this is a big one for me, because quite often we have a school development plan, and then we'll have subject action plans and an early years action plan that have no relevance, bear no relation to that school development plan. So actually, we need to think about how we're aligning priorities. So, for example, if your priority in your school development plan is about reading, then we should be looking at early reading as part of the early years action plan. Subject leaders should be looking at what reading looks like in their subjects. Because if it's big enough to be a whole school priority, then everybody needs to be playing a part in the development of that particular area. And actually what that does is pare down the number of actions that people are taking and the number of development priorities that we see in school as well. So with this in mind, we're going to have a look over the next few slides at some of the questions that you might come across in the self-evaluation tool. And you're not so much considering the question itself, you are going to look at how you might use one of the 6 indicators of good practice that we've got on that slide to enable you to evaluate that area effectively. Okay, anybody got any questions at this point? Everyone all right? Give me a little wave or a smile if you're okay. Yay! They're all okay, Amy? Nobody's falling over or crying. We're good. Right, so let's have a think about that first priority, which is all about purpose. Why are we prioritizing this particular area? Why is it important? And as I've said, it's going to lead to some kind of action. And as Amy said, the whole process of the self-evaluation into action planning is like an action research model. So you're going to identify what you want to be, where you want to be, what the future looks like. You're going to plan it. You're going to do it. You're going to evaluate and study and see if it's actually having the right impact. And if it is, then it becomes part of your everyday practice. So you will take action and ensure it becomes part of your everyday practice from now on. So if we have a look at the question there that we've got, which has come from the self-evaluation tool, you can see the indoor and outdoor environment is stimulating and encourages children to safely explore risks and challenge their own learning. So you're thinking about giving yourself an evaluation against those 4 what do we call them, Amy? Those the 4 things, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Do you mean on as in I don't like to say the word grades?
Yeah, what do we call? Is it like are they
oh, you're testing me now. Developing.
No, I can't remember. This doesn't look good, does it? Sorry, folks. Are we looking at, is it sort of development levels?
Yeah.
We'll say that. That sounds good.
One of them is the word developing, and I can't remember which one.
Is it? Yeah. These are our development levels. So are you just starting to develop that particular area, or is the development done and you are the best you can possibly be in that area? So if you think about this particular question in relation to purposeful evaluation, it's going to lead to some kind of action. How would we gather information about this particular aspect? Who would we want to speak to? And what kind of action would we take from the information that we've actually gathered? So has anybody experienced this as a priority, or part of this as a priority? I have to tell you that on most action plans I look at, we've got outdoor learning. It seems to be there every blooming year, doesn't it? So just have to think about what you would need to do to identify the action that you're going to take from your evaluation of the development level of this question. Anybody got anything they want to share or say? Has anybody got outdoor learning on their action plan? You know, nobody's saying it.
Everyone has, really.
Hello, we'll speak.
Yay!
This is something that we are really focusing on and that we have this year, like stripping it back. Yeah, so like both indoor and outdoor, and making sure like there's a progression in the area and that it's purposeful. So that is something that we are developing at the moment.
Have you seen the skills progression, the common play skills progression document?
So we've used the ECHAs and we've started to create our own progression of skills in each area, but focusing on one area at a time so that it's
where I've done that in school, we've seen an impact on the practice of staff, because the expectation in the construction area, for example, is not the same in September as it is in July, is it? But actually, some of our support staff don't understand that fully, because nobody's ever explicitly said to them, we should have a raised expectation, you know. So beginning of the year, we might be expecting children to build towers, but by the end of the year we want them to be building worlds and joining things with roads and, you know, using small world, and, you know, so there should be a raised expectation, but if we don't explicitly tell staff, why would they know that? You know, interesting, isn't it? Anybody else want to say anything around this? So can I just ask, is it Heidi? What led to that?
I'm Heidi. This is Jodie, who's the early years.
Hiya, Jodie. So what was it that you noticed? What did you find out that indicated you needed to take action?
I think our play wasn't purposeful. Wasn't really a challenge then. There wasn't a progression. I think the play was the same throughout the year. And we just needed to strip it back and think about what we want the outcomes to be in those areas, and the challenge and the different skills as well, and what skills as staff we're teaching the children and how they can then independently use them in those areas.
Yeah.
We also had a new team of staff in early years.
Oh, right. Okay.
Are you 3 or 4 years?
4 years.
4 years now in early years.
Right.
But we had 2 new members of staff as well who'd come from local nurseries. So they knew the children and there were relationships, but they hadn't worked in school settings. So it was working with them as well, but using like the common play behaviours and things like, so their interactions are purposeful as well. And we have really seen that as leaders when we've gone back to have a look at, like, you know, what's going on in the classroom and that sort of thing. You can see how the children are able to choose a thick paintbrush or a thin one, depending on what it is that they're doing. So we've done quite a bit indoor. We want to really start looking at the outdoor now as well and making sure that that looks really stimulating. Obviously, money is a barrier.
And it's tricky. I think it is trickier the outdoor as well. I think it's always trickier. But I like that because you've made that observation. You haven't just introduced the progression of common play skills. You've actually looked at it in the context of your children. So it's led to some kind of meaningful action. And now you can evaluate that and say, actually, it is having the impact. We've seen the action from that. Sometimes what I'll see is that you know, they'll just, people magically happen, and it doesn't, does it? It's a long process to get the action, the purposeful action, so that then you can see the impact of the work that you've done. So it's what
Jodie was just saying is, like, been a bit, sorry, my camera keeps going up. It has been a bit of, you're doing like that surface level, like sticking something up, expecting it to happen. But she's worked quite a lot with her staff, so it's a good early years team now. And I think the cohort we've had this year as well, they started off quite challenging because there's a lot of SEN need. But we can see as well in the children, like, how they've developed, you know, that things have definitely moved on.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's so good. Excellent. Right, okie dokie. So let's have a think about meaningful self-evaluation. And this is really about drilling down. What does the information tell us? What exactly does it tell us? And what are we going to do about that information? So if you think about assessment information, unpicking your assessment information takes time, doesn't it? Putting it in the context of the children, looking at the progress that they've made, looking at the different groups that you've got within the cohort, the challenges that some of them might have had, you know, all sorts of things we look at in early years, don't we? So we look at, you know, summer birthdays and autumn birthdays, etc., etc. You're going to do the same kind of thing when you are looking at meaningful self-evaluation with the outcome from your whole evaluation. So you're going to be using these donuts quite carefully to identify the area that actually needs that meaningful change. And it is about impact on children. So don't forget, if you can't start the sentence with children, when you're thinking about the ultimate outcome, then is it actually worth doing? So let's have a think about this one. I'm going to ask you to go into breakout rooms, if that's all right, Fee.
Yes, it's fine.
Thank you, that's brilliant. So the question is, the learning activities, or the statement is, the learning activities provided for children in early years across the academic year and over a day consistently match the aims of the curriculum. So if you've got your curriculum right, everything that you deliver each hour, each day, each week, each half term, each year should be aligned with the needs of the children. And we're looking for impact on children. So I just want you to have a little chat about what it is that you would need to know. So what information might you need to gather? And also, what will you need to ensure that your staff know? What do they need to know to enable them to drive learning against that priority? So we'll just have about 10 minutes, if that's okay.
No problem. And just Linda and Kelly, if you want to swap rooms, just come back in and I can move you around.
Okay,
thank you. Hello, folks. So you've been talking about meaningful evaluation, linked to the impact on children, and you've been talking about the curriculum. And I asked you, what do adults need to know to ensure that this has the desired impact? So should we start with the Pennine group?
Right, I'll go. So we talked a lot about meaningful interactions with adults.
Yeah.
We talked about making sure that adults sort of understand that balance between knowing when to interact with the children and when to just stand back if a child is really engrossed in what they're doing. And also making sure that there's that rich vocabulary and that we're really pushing the language in early years. Making sure that staff have had really quality training on communicational language and that there's also lots of quality interventions in place for children that come with that really low level of communication.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great, thank you. Should we have group 4?
Hey, would you like me to speak? Group 4? Sure, no one will object. We just spoke about it's always knowing the why we do it for children, and it's always referring back to that. So making sure that our provision and our teaching activities are set and with the why in mind, why are we doing this, and does it link back to our early learning goal?
So why this? Why now? Why for this children? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And then ensuring that all the staff are made aware of the early learning goal and all the steps building up towards that to make sure that children are on the right pathway at all times.
Yeah, So staff know your curriculum.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good. That's brilliant. Thank you. Should we have 3?
Hi. Very similar discussion, really. We were just saying that the layers that are really important. So it's obviously understanding the curriculum, understanding why the curriculum is what it is, you know, why it's being designed, you know, with your cohort in mind, because that might change year upon year. Again, which is quite challenging because it can change and it can adapt, and it's making sure everyone's on that journey with you. Obviously, then you've got the skills progression, and we were saying, you know, for example, which again can be challenging because we share outside, so we've got a lovely outside, but we share between preschool and reception, which means we share adults. So the extra challenge is that all staff need to be aware of the curriculums within preschool and reception, and the skill progression within, you know, from preschool to reception. And also the child development, and you know, and the needs of a lot of children. So it's an added dynamic that you know, you constantly have to spin a lot of plates with that. And the training that goes alongside that become quite challenging. You know, a lot of staff leave early or are part of after school clubs, so it's making sure that you've got some system within school to ensure that everybody is on the same page, so you've got that consistency, so that, you know, your development and your progress can be embedded by everybody, and everyone can articulate the why confidently.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really important. It is frustrating, isn't it, when you've got staff and you can't guarantee they're going to get the same level of CPD as everybody else. And it's really trying to find opportunities, isn't it, for them to observe and, you know, see what a good one looks like, so they understand what it is that you're actually expecting from them.
Absolutely. And I think the accountability that is on the shoulders of support staff is quite a lot, actually. And but then you'll have this is not a negative, but some staff will want to be empowered, so will stay after school or will ask more questions, whereas some staff, you know, due to an array of reasons, that doesn't happen. But then again, as a leader, you've got to make sure that everybody is being kept up to speed somehow, and that training is being delivered and offered.
Absolutely. It's a tough one, isn't it? It's a really tough one to ensure that you've got that consistent understanding of things like effective interaction and why play is important and how we play with children, which I think is why with some of the places that I've worked with this year, we've just looked at those 3 methods of interacting, because otherwise, if you say, you know, interact better, it's a bit like, whoa, no idea what you're talking about, and then we end up with loads of questions and, you know, lots of adult talk. But it's a tough one. Brianna, go on.
It is as well, but also it's being able to have, like when we said about relationships and being nurturing with your staff, it's being able to have those really like critical conversations, but in a constructive way. It's about actually sharing experiences of what works well, what doesn't, but actually like you say, in a supportive way, empowering everybody, which means that sometimes we'll have to have difficult conversations, but actually to make sure that the children ultimately are getting the best possible deal, and then you can have you'll see the impact over time of that. I'll be quiet
now. No. It's really good.
Short break, just to show everyone knows.
Group 2.
We said quite a lot of similar things. Some of the other things that we said was obviously the baseline of the children and knowing the children's backgrounds, experiences, and the demographic of them, and making sure that any gaps are filled, and thinking about that when you've planned into like the progression. And we've said obviously staff knowledge, which has been said before, of understanding the progression, having the CPD training, and then obviously the feedback for that as well. We've also put about noticing how the children perform each week and making sure the learning's extended. And then we've also put review of the curriculum and the progression and not being afraid of change. So if we can see that they need something slightly different, just changing it rather than thinking, oh, we'll keep it because we did it last year and it works. Like I said, it's a different cohort, different demographic every single year. So just making sure that it's suitable.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything else has been noted, I think, before.
Yeah, you're right. Every single context, every single cohort is totally different, aren't they? And I think more rapidly changing as well year on year. Group 1, anything you want to add?
I'll go again. We've noted there was lots, obviously, that it was the same sort of similar things, but we said also about that all the staff aren't just, like you say, I think on the very first person that chatted on this one said about how the interaction of staff and obviously knowing when to speak, but also intervene within the intervention or the activity that was happening, but also about just taking that step back and noticing and noticing when to intervene as well. There's lots of staff that probably, again, like you said, when they're being observed or if someone's there to come and see, that they do often just want to speak to the children because they want to make it appear like, oh, we are doing something, I promise. But it's just so beneficial to, that the staff know when to sort of intervene in that sort of activity, really. And then we also said about sort of meeting the needs of all children. Oh, Jane, who was in our chat room, said, like, she's based in an SEN school, and where we've got to really think about PICA and things like that. So some of her environment activities will look very different to maybe my setting or some other setting. So it's ensuring how we sort of give the children all the opportunities that they can have within that curriculum, but that they meet those individualized needs as well, really. And then we talked about making sure that all subject leaders throughout the school have that knowledge within our curriculum and our aims, so that there is that progression again. I know we've already talked about our curriculum and it being very much a working document. It's not something that's completely set in stone. It is that document that we might have to change throughout the year multiple times just to ensure that we're meeting the needs of all the children.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think you've absolutely nailed it there. There's so much more than you think. Is that when you first look at that statement, it seems fairly straightforward, and then you start unpicking it. Actually, there's masses behind it, and I think that's why it's important as well that we've got other people involved in the self-evaluation. So it's not just on your shoulders and you're sort of reading it and thinking, probably about to. It needs a deeper discussion, doesn't it? And you might be looking at things like play. Does everybody understand the purpose of play? What impact does play actually have on the children? Does everybody understand adaptations for SEND children? Do they understand the characteristics of effective learning and what that actually does for children? So those deeper conversations are really going to enable you to accurately evaluate each of the statements. So the next thing we're going to look at is context informed. So we're going to think about the context of your children, but we also need to think about the context of your children in relation to the national context as well. So the broader context for early years children and the expectations and what the DFE are asking for you to be delivering to your children and what the impact needs to be. So we're ultimately looking at impact here, and we're looking at context-informed evaluation. So through the delivery of your well-planned, child-led, challenging curriculum, the children leave the early years foundation stage as independent learners with transferable skills needed to start Key Stage 1. So if you just have a think about that as a whole group, think about the context of your children. What are the strengths that they come to school with? What are the gaps and what are the barriers? Do your adults know children well enough? Do they understand the national context and what impact that might have on your school and individual contexts? And what are we hoping the outcome is going to be? So what does that look like for your children if they're independent learners with transferable skills and they're ready for Key Stage 1, so they're ready for the next phase of their education? What does that look like for your children in your school? So if anybody's brave enough to answer any of those questions, please do unmute and give me a shout. It'd be nice to hear your perspectives. Go on, Anna. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. Can't hear you. You're not speaking.
Who are you asking then, Sarah?
Anna. She looked like she was talking, and
oh,
then...
I am talking. You just can't hear me.
Oh, there you are.
Oh, I'm here. Promise, I'm here. I think for me, the school. I've had the luxury actually of working in 3 different schools within the same trust, and all very, very different. So I can see what needs to happen differently, or what's important and what the gaps are in different settings. The setting I'm in currently, the children come in as expected, from preschool, expected level, really good language, really good experiences. However, I found here self-regulation and actual self-care is quite low. And the new children that come into our reception, because we haven't sort of like ironed that out in preschool, actually that's quite a challenge for us, is the self-regulation. I think in my previous school it was language development that was very challenging, and that had to be a key focus. Whereas so that's very different. I think to me, having children that can risk take and can persevere and have got the self-regulation and have got self-confidence and self-belief, I think the prime areas to me are just fundamental. And I think if you've got them well embedded within your curriculum, and you've got children that are adaptable and can problem solve and think critically, then actually the academic learning will come. I think if you haven't got that, then they will find it more difficult, I would say, as they move through school, mainly because the prime areas in some aspects don't get a look in, because then it all becomes very academic. So, I'm always a believer that I think that the skills that are transferable are that if you can self-regulate and you understand your emotions and you have good fine motor and you can communicate and you have good language, then you will be able to take on board the academic challenges that come beyond reception.
Yeah. I think you're right, and it's knowledge, isn't it? We need people, we need leaders who have the right knowledge and they understand the importance of those particular aspects. I think there is that misconception where children come in with gaps and barriers that actually learning needs to be more formal more quickly, so that, you know, we can get them to the early learning goal. And actually it's exactly the opposite, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think in the school I am now, I'd say a barrier actually would be, and we've worked a lot you know, as a team, we've worked a lot with parents. A barrier is actually parents thinking that they don't need to be independent.
Yes. Yeah.
That's actually a barrier, because we are trying to, you know, encourage all this.
Yeah.
And again, this demographic, risk taking. We've had to work so much on, actually it's okay, you know, we're teaching children to manage their risks. We manage, you know, teaching them to be independent in that skill. So I'd say that's a huge barrier.
Oh, it is. And I think parents misunderstand the value of risk taking. You know, so to take a risk, they have to assess their own capability, and actually that skill transfers continually into adulthood, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So the risks that you are taking are more considered because you know your own capability, and you're also assessing the variables that can come into that whole risk-taking process. If you don't allow a child to take a risk, then when they come out of school, you know, we end up with children going down or adults going down quite dark pathways because they haven't assessed their own capability. They don't know how to do that. And I think a lot of parents have lost that view of the value of things like that, haven't they?
Yeah, definitely. I think they see it as a negative somehow. I don't know why, but they see it as a bad thing when and want to keep them younger, which I get in some aspects, but we know that the best thing in the world is for them to be as independent in an array of skills as possible. So
yeah, absolutely, I agree with you.
I have to agree with Anna there. I've got written down because Anna and I have got similar demographics, haven't we?
Oh, okay.
So I wrote down strengths. The children come in with great cultural capital. You know, they've got them experiences. They've got well-educated parents, but then a barrier to that is the actual parents. Sometimes there's such a hindrance to us. You know, they're entitled. They interfere. They think they know better. They question everything that you do, and that's what I found that is really different where I am now at Cranbury than I was at Belgrave. It's been something that's been quite difficult at times to deal with as well. And I think Anna's finding that, you know, where she is now, similar, really.
Yeah. That's really interesting, isn't it? Right, so brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for your input there. That's invaluable. If we move on now and think about evidence, so evidence-informed evaluation, you are gathering evidence from a whole range of different sources, and it is about talking to people, making those observations, ensuring that everybody is feeding into the self-evaluation. So if we think about effective self-evaluation leads to concerted and successful actions to improve provision and outcomes for all children. You think about what Heidi and Jodie was saying, that is absolutely evidence informed. So that need for action came from the evidence-informed evaluation of the environment and the impacts of the environment. So that is a real basic aspect to self-evaluation. Sometimes I find people will go on training and then they'll come back to school and say, right, we need to change all of this. And actually, that's not what training is for, is it? It's not about, you know, we get people who have a different methodology every week because they've gone on a few training courses. If you see something and you think that could have an impact on our children, let's look at what we're doing now. Which bit of it would have an impact on the children? How do I know? What evidence have I got that it would be better than what we're doing now? Where are the gaps? Where are the barriers? You know, so it's a more considered, broader conversation, isn't it? Rather than I've been on a course and we all need to do this now. So the other type of evidence you're going to be looking at is your assessment information. And like I said, I've pulled together some of the national information just so you can see what that national picture looked like last year. So if we think about groups, we can see some quite interesting data there, again, around gender gaps, around language, around free school meals, and around term of birth. So things like that, if you're seeing that in your school overarching data over time, then that could be the thing that leads to some meaningful action. So you're using that assessment evidence, you're looking at it over time, and you're thinking about what can we put into place to actually enable us to address some of those issues. And it's about getting to the point, isn't it, where you are proactive rather than reactive. And I think a lot of the practice this year has been very reactive because it's had to be, around things like self-regulation, behaviour, SEND. There's been a lot of reactive practice. Maybe we get to a point where we are no longer accepting that there is a gender gap, and we're going to look at proactive methods to reduce that gender gap, and that becomes a little bit of your action research. And that could actually last beyond an academic year, couldn't it? Because it could involve a lot of unpicking and different strategies and methodologies. We can also use things like deprivation and disadvantaged indicators just to see whether we are happy with the outcomes for children who might be disadvantaged, and that could lead then to more meaningful change, and also where the children are. So what do the outcomes look like based on where in the country they live? And this always floors me, I have to say. The Northwest is always at the bottom, which is really quite depressing. So it's really thinking about what is it about the area that we live in that produces those barriers that prevent children from actually doing well against the early learning goals or reaching that good level of development. So you might start by looking at the national picture, and then you're going to drill down into your own data and look at whether you've got that similar picture, and then start to explore those strategies that might enable you to address some of those issues. As I said, self-regulation is a big one at the moment. So looking at the explicit teaching of executive functioning can really help to mitigate some of those issues that we're finding around self-regulation. I'm going to skip over the next 3 slides quite quickly because quite often people have a little bit of a when they see them. But this is a school that really started to unpick a lot of their data. They've got a very structured system of tracking progress, but what it does do is enable them to unpick where the assessment information tells them that something might be going awry. So you can see there are questions that are raised. Have some children made negative progress? Is this one child done well enough? And then they break it down and use initials so that they can actually identify which children may not have made enough progress, or which children appear to have gone backwards. So you can see IL there, IL appears to have sort of bounced around a little bit. So is that something to do with the curriculum, or is it something to do with attendance? Is it something to do with adult knowledge? So it sort of gives you a starting point. The evidence gives you a starting point to start to really unpick what's happening for that particular cohort. So we're going to think about who is involved in the evaluation now. And like I've said, it needs to be a fully collaborative process where everybody is drawn into, everybody within early years. You might sample your parents, you might be talking to the children, and leaders in school as well are all drawn into the whole process of self-evaluation. So if you think about this in terms of transition, before the children move from foundation stage into key stage 1, staff meet to exchange information about progress, ability, SEND, and any other information relevant to the wellbeing and development of individual children. Information is used to group children, plan the curriculum, and set future targets. So this is quite an interesting one when you start to get the perspective of a broad range of people within your school context. And some people will say, yeah, it's absolutely fine, transition's fine. And some people, year 1 teachers may say, well, no, it's not actually, because I didn't have this information, I wasn't aware of this gap. Parents may say that children are over anxious about moving into year 1. And all of that feedback can enable you to then identify whether that particular aspect of your work has been effective or not. So it's not just about your perspective, it needs to be a truly collaborative approach where you're drawing on information from a wide range of sources. Let me just have a look there.
I was just going to say on that one as well, Sarah, we this was another one, wasn't it, that comes up a lot in people's action plans, in kind of that planning transition, and we did a few sessions on it.
Yes,
our CPD this year, and actually it drove some really interesting schools that have been involved in the programme in the different ways in which they're approaching, and some of them, little plug, but some people are coming to the summer conference, specifically talking about kind of how they've stretched out that transition and kind of reception and play and changing continuous provision to aid transition into kind of year 1, year 2, but also doing more proactive work where teachers in other year groups coming and working in the reception classroom and experiencing and understanding, not just getting to know some of the children, but really understanding how learning takes place, and what that looks like and feels like within there, all part of that kind of idea around transition to make sure that seems more seamless as children move up through the school. But yeah, it was quite a big one last year as well coming up, wasn't it?
I think it's like outdoor play. I think it always feels like a big one. Certainly when I was in school, we used to start transition from the moment the children entered early years. So we'd start by delivering a staff meeting where we'd talk about the new cohort and what we knew about them and the gaps and the strengths and the barriers. So everybody owned that cohort. Everybody knew about them. They knew who the siblings were. They knew, if there was anything unusual about the cohort, what the starting points were. So in my head, that was about ensuring that the school understand that they are part of that child's journey, and it's not just about early years for a year or 2 years, it's about everybody, because these children are going to move their way through the school. And that seemed to work quite well. It wasn't just one staff meeting, it would be developmental. So across the year we'd have a few more where we're just talking about that cohort of children and what issues are arising, and the ins and outs of them and what's changed and all of that stuff. So that's worked fairly well for me in the past. Okie dokie. So if we think about the final aspect, which is connected, so it has to be related to whole school priorities. It can't be that early years have a whole set of totally different priorities, because that doesn't make sense, does it? If you've got whole school priorities, early years play a part in that educational journey for children. So there must be something happening or not happening in early years that would feed into whole school priorities. And I'm not saying all aspects have to relate to whole school priorities. Certainly things like outdoor play, if that's on your action plan every year, quite often that doesn't relate to whole school priorities. Or sometimes it does, because it can be to do with independence, resilience, stamina, creative and critical thinking, all of those different areas. So it can relate to whole school priorities. But just really think about that role that early years plays in the development of the child's education through early years, key stage 1 and key stage 2, because like we said right from the start, you are setting the foundation for that whole journey. Okay, so anybody want to comment on the effective use of adults in the setting? So the statement says all adults have dedicated non-contact time that's used for liaison. This ensures that all staff have a clear understanding of concepts, vocabulary, and information to be covered in learning activities and continuous provision. Now, I know that there are challenges around that statement, but I also know that the impact of doing that is significant and it is worth doing. So does anybody want to share anything that they've managed to do to enable that to happen, and any challenges you may have overcome that enables that to actually happen in your setting?
I don't mind sharing.
You.
So us again. So at the start of this year, we had a whole new early years team. So we noticed that the staff that had come up from the nurseries, they didn't get the appropriate training to what we expected from them. So how we expect them to interact with the children. So we created team meetings every Tuesday, just for half an hour to train the support staff so that we're all on the same board, and not only train them to make them feel a part of creating documents with us, so they have the ownership for those, and they can then take them into discovery time and use them and know how to use the documents and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's it has to be a priority, doesn't it? So it's finding space where that development can happen. It's not to me, it's sort of a baseline expectation. It's not a wish or an ideal. It's absolutely their entitlement. And if we're expecting them to do something, they need the information, don't they? They absolutely need the information. So that's really useful. Thanks, Jodie. Anybody else want to share? Is anybody finding that an enormous challenge at the moment?
I suppose in ways it can be quite challenging, especially with you support staff's contracts and things, finding that time to pin people down. And, sometimes you're asking people to give up half an hour of their time, or which can be a big ask at times. Trying to just maybe squeeze stuff into morning briefings is something we're trying to do just to bring the team together. Of regards of staff understanding the continuous provision there, we've always tried to now adapt this approach that any member of staff can direct anyone around the provision. So through planning documents, I suppose, that we've put on a continuous provision map, ensuring that when we're setting up together as a team, that they're understanding why things are out, and then that they can then explain that.
Yeah.
So it's almost not necessarily, it's more working alongside them with the time that you've got.
Yeah.
Almost as a coaching element more than a staff meeting, if that makes sense.
Yes, yeah. I think I do think you're right, Adam. I think in some schools, because they haven't been able to draw staff together and train them, they have done it as kind of a almost like co-learning with the other adults. So I'll do it, you do it alongside me. I'll show you what it needs to look like, and then you crack on and have a go. So it's almost like the I do, we do, you do, isn't it, approach to teaching, but doing that with your adults. And I actually think sometimes that has more impact than just attending training, doesn't it? Because they can actually see it on the ground, so they understand what it is you're talking about. Okay, anybody else want to make any comments around this?
Just in line with what Adam said, really, on our CP plan, we ensure that the skills that are being met for each activity is clearly outlined on the CP, and the children are identified as well that need to be using that specific activity. So perhaps not so confident staff or new staff, or even cover staff if you've got sickness. All they need to do is look at the CP. They can say exactly what's there, why it's out, and which children it's particularly targeting.
Yeah, I know what we're talking about, and sometimes they feel like they can't ask the silly question, which is a real shame. And it goes right back to what we said at the beginning about why lead, and it is about having those really strong relationships, isn't it? So everybody's on the same page and you've all got a shared vision.
Can I just add there about like the words we use? I know when I first came here, I came in mid-year and I started going on and actually I was talking about all these different things, and it was after a while actually that someone said, right, can you just explain what you actually mean when you're saying this?
Yeah.
So like, to me, I was like coming in, I was like so excited.
Yeah.
And I was like, right, we're going to do this, and what do you think of this, and what are your ideas about this? And then it was actually, quite a few weeks later, they're lovely, but I think when they got to know me a little bit better, and she just said, right, can I just ask you, what are you going on about? Like, what do you actually mean? Like, explain to me. And I was like, oh, okay, right, yeah, of course, right. So then we went right back, which was great. Like, that's brilliant. But again, don't assume that people know what you're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. That's brilliant. Thanks, Anna. So sticking with the idea of adults in the setting, I used to use this book, just a little bit of an aside, but recognizing the impact that adults will have on interact with during a day. Our youngest children don't have that ability to brush things off. They soak everything in, don't they? And the emotional environment is so incredibly important. And I used to use this little book, and it's called Fish, A Remarkable Way to Boost Morale and Improve Results. And it's called Fish because it's based on the Seattle Pike Place fish market, and these guys working in this fish market, and it's cold and it's smelly, and they have to get there really early. So they came up with these principles, and you can watch videos of them as well on YouTube. It's just hilarious. They just have so much fun throughout the day. And the first principle is to play and just enjoy what's happening. And I don't know how you can work in early years and not find something to enjoy every day, or something that makes you laugh. Something always happens that makes you have a little chuckle on the way home, doesn't it? And they're an absolute joy. Some of the things that they say are just joyous. And we need to be in a position where we can be open and accept that. But I think sometimes adults need to understand that they pick up on children pick up on micro expressions far more than adults do. If an adult is sad or upset or rolls their eyes at a child, they soak that in. And even if the adult's mood is not about the child, they assume it is, and it fractures that relationship a little bit. So they have to be very, very aware that children are constantly tuned into adults' facial expressions, to their micro expressions, to their body language, and they're constantly listening and soaking all of that in. So we have to be really careful with that. But these 4 principles I loved using in school. So play, we all commit to having fun, because children are more likely to sign up to what we're trying to deliver if it's fun, if it's contextualized, if it's purposeful, if it's play-based, and if we enjoy it as well, they're more likely to learn. Don't forget, early years is about tricking children into learning what we need them to know. The second one is be there, but this is great for your staff as well. So be totally present. If somebody's telling you something, don't be thinking about the next job that you have to do, because children in particular know that you are not fully present with them, and they feel undervalued. So be there is about giving full attention. Make someone's day is about positivity. It's about optimism. It's about making sure that you make that person that you're interacting with, be it a parent, a leader in school, a child, a staff member, make them feel like they are the most important person in the world at that particular time. And that one thing has such a massive impact on relationships. Honestly, I can't tell you. You give full attention, you come at every interaction with positivity and optimism, and find joy in everything, and it can really, really help to cement some of those relationships and actually improve aspects of your provision at a much faster rate, because you're bringing the team along with you. And then this final one, choose your attitude. I used to say to my staff, you can have a baggage drop at the beginning of the day. So if you've got something you need to moan about, you can do it for 10 minutes before we open the doors. And by all means, you know, if it's me you want to moan about, just do it. It's fine. Get it all off your chest. And then when we open the door, you are choosing positivity. You are choosing optimism, joy, fun. And if you can't do that, then you shouldn't be in early years. I always think it's like being a dog groomer and being allergic to dogs. Why would you do it? Why would you work with children if you just don't like them? Do you know what I mean? And I've worked with a few teachers who openly admit they don't really like children, which is bizarre. So strange. And just to finish my bit, this whole program is about your empowerment. This is about you getting to a point where you fully understand everything that's happening in your early years, and you know exactly what needs to happen to move your early years on. So I've put Maslow's pyramid there because we use that in relation to children constantly, but actually this pyramid is for every single human. So you need to have all of these needs met to enable you to get to that self-actualization point where you can drive improvement for the benefit of the children and bring your whole team along with you as well. So as I said, it's about empowerment. Really enjoy it. Really enjoy this whole process. You're going to get a lot out of it. Sorry, Amy, I have taken us almost to the wire.
That's all right. I can fit this in 3 minutes and finish it. Woo! I reckon it's a good challenge for me. Thank you so much, Sarah. That's an enormous amount of expertise and information that you shared today, and been really, really valuable. So just a really quick, you can do the clicks on this one, Sarah. Thank you. Just a really quick reminder of this is kind of the start of a process, a school evaluation that will take you through the whole of the next year. The next job is for you to get online with your EMS, which could not be a simpler tool. And you've all got your logins now. So you can kind of continue to do that afterwards and just get in touch with us if there's any problems whatsoever. Next one, Sarah. And then you're going to get all of these slides as well. So don't worry about trying to make notes of these dates, but that basically the next month or so of you having a chance to do that evaluation with your school leaders, even with some people do it with their whole SLT, which is fantastic, or with your team within the early years department. And so that's kind of your next job, if you like, and then we will meet together again in September, and I will be in touch with both leads around those arrangements in due course, and probably pop a meeting in with both of you in the next couple of weeks. Next one, Sarah. All the way through the course of the year, like we've had this year, you will have those expertise into practice, which you can access through our digital network. So in a moment, I'll be popping up the QR code where you can just jump straight onto that. But before I do that, just a little reminder and a plug, Sarah, next slide, of our summer conference. So it's a 2-day summer conference, and the first day of it on the 30th of June, there is a huge strand around early years that will be fantastic. So if you can get yourself to the summer conference, and particularly that day, please do. It's going to be a really, really good day. And I know quite a lot of heads from St. Bart's have already signed up to that, which is fantastic. Sarah will be there. Lots of other people will be there as well. It's looking to be about 500 delegates on that day, and a huge number of speakers. You go onto the Whole Education website, you can see the information about that one. And then next slide, Sarah, this is the QR code that will take you to the digital network, but you have got your invitation and your login details in the email from Fee that she's already sent you. And it's good to kind of, one of those things to get on and just play around in it, put it in your favorites bar so you can get to it nice and easily, and you can play around on the site. It works kind of like a social media thing, and you can connect with other people, send other people messages on there, as well as logging into all sorts of events that are happening and find all the kind of pre-recordings of different things. And then the last little message from me, next slide, Sarah, is just to remember, and I know Sarah has said this a few times, what an important role you have. You for many, many, many children are the first experience they have of our education system. And the most important thing that they get out of that is joy and a love for wanting to be learning and doing more. So never forget how important it is. And I'm hoping that this little video will work as Sarah clicks on the picture. I do a bit of work in Africa, and we've been building some preschools. And this is a little lad who for the first time ever experienced a pair of scissors. And it just always reminds me of that absolute joy when a child does something for the very first time. Can you see if it works, Sarah? Can you click on the picture? Hold on a sec. Ah! I don't think it's going to do anything. Or I can stick mine up quickly. Shall I stick mine up, Sarah? Yes, I don't think it's going to enable me to do it quickly. Sorry. That's all right. I'll stop sharing. Here we go, let's see. It's like literally about a second. Look at his little face. Did you see that? Did he show? Yeah. So just a reminder of how important the job is that you do, and all those new experiences all the time that children are getting from you. So please don't ever forget that. Oh, he's coming again now. Look, I can't even move on. We will stop around for a couple of minutes if people have got any questions. You want to ask anything, but other than that, thank you very much. I think Fee will send you a feedback form, or it might have gone in a chat already because she is super organised like that.
Gone in the chat, and it will come in the email afterwards.
There you go, both of them. So thank you very, very much for today, and thank you very much to Sarah for your time, your expertise, all the experience that you've shared with everybody. And
thank you. I always enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, folks. Take care. Hopefully see you at the conference.
Thank
Linda,
you,
if you want to
Sarah,
stop
Amy,
for one
and
second,
Fee.
Linda.
Much appreciated for all your work.
Linda, do you want to stop on for a second?
Yes, please.
And just you can open up the link and be filling it in without having to stay here with us.
Oh, thank you.
And Emily, and yeah, she's got it. And Michelle and Tracy, have you got any more questions? You there, Michelle? I'm assuming Michelle might step away for a minute. Take her out.
Right. Thank you very much, everybody, for this afternoon.